All right, welcome into Mississippi State Postgame Live here on the voice of college football. Andrew Miller coming your way on a Sunday night. A little bit of a change up from what we're used to. Obviously, I would typically be doing this show sometime after the game. That's obviously the plan most of the time. But obviously, late game for Mississippi State. I had postgame stuff I had to write, and I had to get up early this morning on Sunday for some church stuff. We had Thanksgiving dinner at my church today, and I was helping my cousin get turkeys fried, which was he was the one frying the turkeys. I was basically there for moral support and for cleaning dishes, but I had to get up early for that. So knew I couldn't stay up all night doing a post-game reaction show, even though I'm sure it would have been popping a little bit more in the wake of that performance against the Tigers. But nonetheless, we're here now on a Sunday evening to talk about what happened in that game. Not a fun game for Mississippi State. An ugly watch. 49-27 is the final. And just a lot of the things that you've been frustrated about as fans for this season, you got it in this game. So, yeah, we're going to get into all of that here shortly. For those of you who are tuning in, if you could leave us a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're not already, turn that notification bell on so you do know we do go live. And if you could share the stream, share the channel, all that fun stuff, and follow us on social media. I don't ever point that out, but follow us on social media too. Would certainly greatly appreciate that. So Mississippi State takes the loss, 49-27 to Missouri. A game that just kind of saw a lot of the blunders you've seen from Mississippi State this season overall. They struggled to do anything with any sort of consistency on offense. Quarterback play was a problem. Jeff Lebby's play calling seemed problematic. Some of the decision-making and how they handled things seemed problematic. And it really came back to bite them once again. Defensively, ugly game. You give up over 300 yards rushing and 300 yards to one player. The most by any player in the FBS this season. Ahmad Hardy runs for 300 on the dot against the Bulldogs. Averaged more than a first down per carry. And it really felt like that every time he touched the ball. It's not like it was a couple long runs skewing things. No. Every time he touched the ball, it was effectively a Missouri first down because State just could not stop the Tiger offense whatsoever in the ground game, at least for the overall majority of the game. You had a massive special teams blunder in one of the more baffling sequences we've seen from Mississippi State that both falls on terrible offensive execution, terrible offensive play calling, and then obviously a special teams mistake that takes at least 3 points, if not 7 points, off the board for you, and then a few plays later leads to 7 points for Missouri. You have multiple turnovers, 2 pick sixes that the Tigers run back. A fourth down call from Lebby that didn't make a whole lot of sense given where it happened. That led to points for Missouri because one of those pick sixes happens on that fourth down play. This was an all-around really, really bad game, and it was another example of a performance that Mississippi State fans are going to look at and question, do we have the right guy leading our program? And, I've got it in the title to this video. Bulldogs looked poorly coached and an ugly loss to Missouri. Poorly coached is the way that team looked. They looked poorly coached in pretty much all phases. I will defend the defense some as we get later and defend Coleman Hutzler some as we get further into this video. But there were things you saw from the defense in this game that I would say, it falls back at a certain point on a coaching problem, that these are issues that you are running into. And I know that kind of goes against a response I had on social media last night. But, thinking it over, giving it a little more thought, I do start to see the perspective of even, Coleman Hutzler for much of the year has done a good job with that unit. There's still a lot of very obvious issues that probably do extend beyond just the talent on the field. But the offense, at what point do you begin to question if Jeff Lebby is even capable of getting this offense to operate whatsoever? And then his handling of the quarterback situation and where that's at. All of these things have you questioning, do you have the right people leading Mississippi State? And it's one of those very unique circumstances because if you talk about Mississippi State from a 10,000-foot point of view, and you look at where the program was a season ago and where Jeff Lebby took over this program and all that they have had to go through and all that you went through in 2024 and now into 2025 where, hey, you've won 3 more games. You have a lot more talent on the field. You have shown the ability to, at your best, be competitive against maybe not good teams, if we're being completely honest, but teams that are not total laughing stocks and teams that are solid. And when you talk about their best case scenario, you've shown the ability to compete with some of those teams. And you are going into the Egg Bowl one win away from bowl eligibility, which again is something that I think a lot of people, if you told them that before the year, might actually have signed up for that, considering again where this team was at and the fact that many did not know if 5 wins and playing for bowl eligibility in the Egg Bowl was even realistic for this team. That's the big picture point of view, that there is clear upward trajectory for the program. The problem is that you get into the games and you see the performance on Saturdays and you see the moments where Lebby makes decisions that just don't make a lot of sense, makes calls that don't make sense. You see the same issues coming up week after week with this team with no real improvement. And you see them continue to get in their own way and just have so many big blunders and find ways to lose football games. You see blowing it late against Florida. You see blowing a 17-point lead against Texas. All of these things. And you say, yes, the program as a whole has gotten better. But when we watch this team on Saturdays, they still look like a largely incompetent football team. They look like an incompetent football team that just happens to have a few better players than a season ago, and that's why they've managed to win a few more games. But for being completely honest. And that leads to a lot of questions about where this team and where this program is moving forward. Get into, I guess, some of the specifics here. And we'll start with the defense. First question comes in from Trey Clark. We've regressed defensively the last 2 weeks. Is it largely because we faced 2 line of scrimmage teams? I think that's certainly part of it. And I've got that in my notes for the defense. So I'll go ahead and pull those up and get into it. They have fallen off quite a bit. Total defense, they've given up more than 400 yards in every single SEC game that they've played. But the last 2 weeks, in terms of yards per play, 7.7 for Georgia, basically 8 yards per play for Missouri, both of which are terrible. Arkansas held them to 5.6, which is not good, but it was good enough. 5.4 for Texas, which probably should have been good enough, all things considered. Obviously, a special teams touchdown in there, and you also have overtime. So Texas's scoring is a little bit skewed. But Florida was over. You had 3 straight games between Tennessee, Texas, and Florida that were over 6 yards per play. But those were games where defensively, you were also making plays here or there to find ways to get stops and limit them. And I could say that for some of the previous games as well, prior to playing Georgia. So yes, the line of scrimmage is a part of it, but you do start to wonder how much is this just the season wearing on? Is there literal fatigue, and that later in the year this team just they came out firing early in the season, and keeping that level of play up over the course of an entire season for this group is tough. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know if there's any legitimacy to that, and that's not me saying that they've quit on the season, but it's more how many games can you go all out with this unit and find ways to make plays over and over again. I don't know. Have teams started to figure them out and okay, clearly this is the problems. This is how you have to attack this team. And I'm sure that's part of it, right? As the season wears on, you start to figure out how you have to handle teams, and it's become very clear what you have to do with this Mississippi State defense at this point, which really comes down to just leaning on the run game and dominating that facet. Was there luck for a lot of the year? And I don't want to take anything away from them, but you do go back and look at some of those games they played against Arizona State, Tennessee, Florida, even Texas A&M to an extent. Turnovers were big factors in a lot of those games. Red zone stops were big factors in a lot of those games, and that you have managed to hold them out of the end zone, if not at times holding them out of off the scoreboard entirely. This team made some really big stops and key moments early throughout the season. And yes, you step up for those moments. You give the defense credit. You give them credit for the turnovers that they were able to force, and some of those plays being a product of creating a lot of disruption. But turnover luck is a real thing, and it feels like it has sort of started to flip against Mississippi State, where I think a few weeks ago you were talking about them towards the top of the SEC in turnover margin. I don't think that's the case anymore. I could look at it right now, just for curiosity's sake. Where's Mississippi State within the SEC in turnover margin? They are 7th in the league. So, and they are still positive on the season. In conference games, they're 11th, and they have a negative turnover margin in conference games. And I can't go back and confirm. I could confirm, but I'm not going to on the show. That's definitely gotten worse as the season has gone along. The turnovers have become a bigger problem for the offense recently, and your defense is not forcing them at the same rate. Obviously, they had 2 turnovers yesterday, which was great. You get the interception. You also have the fumble recovery. Those were key plays. The defense was able to make those plays. They weren't able to make any other plays, frankly, and that's what leads to the result that you get. And look, the red zone roulette thing, are we trusting that we're going to get stops in the red zone? There were times this season where we've seen some of that bend, don't break mentality from the defense, and they were able to hold up. I wouldn't say they've been taking that approach recently, but still shoring up in the red zone, even if you're not going to play, even if you're playing aggressively, you can still find ways to make stops in the red zone, and that'd be a big key part of what you're able to do. But that is where some of the matchup thing comes in. And you have these teams that are able to be physical and just line up and say, we're going to run the dang ball, and that be what you face. That becomes a lot harder to deal with for a defense. And look, that is where I think a lot of it does come down to the teams they're playing. You are facing teams that are built on their run games and in such a way that is around physicality. These are not teams that are running spread RPO systems where what you do in the run game is dictated on spacing and box count. Well, we have numbers in the run game. We have a spacing advantage in the run game, so therefore we're going to run the football and be effective. Those run games can be effective. That's the type of run game Mississippi State has. But ultimately, the teams that can truly run the ball are the ones that are able to mash you up front and do things schematically in the run game to find advantages and overpower you. And this Mississippi State defense just can't handle that because they don't have the talent on the defensive line. They don't have the bodies to set the edge on defense. That's where they talked about it a lot. Missouri running their wide zone, outside zone scheme or stretch play, whatever you want to call it. That's been a problem for Mississippi State because they don't have guys that can set the edge on defense. Your defensive ends are kind of just mediocre players. Your jack linebackers are kind of mediocre players. And then at times you're asking safeties. Last night it was a lot of Tony Mitchell because you didn't have Isaac Smith playing as a Sam linebacker. They're running right at them. And even if it's a tight end that they're going up against a block, well, Brett Norfleet for Missouri is a really freaking good blocking tight end. It could bowl them over. Georgia got plenty of great tight ends that can bowl you over. If you don't have guys that consistently can take on those blocks and win, you're going to be in trouble. So that is a big part of it, is that they have faced some teams that match up really well against them in terms of how to attack the defense, and they've not been able to handle it well, expectedly so. That is certainly a big part of things on that side of the ball. And look, you compare that to if you face a team like Tennessee, where a lot of their run game does come down to the spacing. I think they handled Tennessee's run game a lot better. How will they handle Ole Miss? Kewan Lacey's obviously a fantastic player. Ole Miss doesn't have a dominant offensive line. Ole Miss's run game is a lot of spacing-based stuff. Will State defend the run better against Ole Miss? I guess this is a knock on wood, and I have a wooden desk, so we'll see. I think State would probably defend the run better against Ole Miss because the way they play, I think, matches up a little bit better. But facing a team like Missouri, you just don't have a chance. And that is a personnel thing. And that is all the reality for State is, losing Will Whitson hurt them a lot. That defensive line is a spot where having the one big dominant force does make life easier on everybody else in that unit. And it makes things tougher for them the rest of the way. But and it's also a product of can you turn around a defense in one offseason and go from having no guys that can play at an SEC level to having a couple guys that are SEC level starters and then a few more guys that are SEC level backups, because that's what State's rolling with on defense right now. They went from having a unit last year that basically had nobody that should be starting in the SEC This year they got a few, and they got some guys who can be SEC backups. That's what they're rolling with. And I said before the season, I really thought this would be a case where when we evaluate this defense, you have to understand that even if they're significantly improved, nearly every offense they're going to face in the SEC has more talent than they do. And what you were going to be looking for was that could they simply do enough to get a few stops a game that you could win some shootouts? I think for much of the season they've done that, and that's where I will defend Coleman Hutzler in that I think for much of the year he has done a good job. I've said it a few times on the show. The one time I've seen him call things in a way I didn't necessarily agree with was against Texas in the second half, where he stayed super aggressive even though Texas started to show they could handle that better. I think Hutz has called it well most of the year. Now, I will be perfectly fair and tell you that me knowing defense, I know offense a whole lot better. Defense, I can kind of look at it and tell you, all right, this is what they're trying to do. But in terms of understanding, are they fitting it well? Is somebody blowing an assignment? A poor technique, whatever. That stuff I'm not going to be able to just catch and know all that well. So it's possible they're doing a lot of things that they are definitely doing poorly. But I do think the hope for this defense was just be improved enough that you handle the teams that you have early in the season that you should be able to overwhelm, which they did, and they can throughout conference play for the most part. And you're going to have a few games where you give up a lot of yards, a lot of points, but for a lot of the games, can you do enough that if you were in a shootout, could you have a chance to win? I would say they do that as well. The problem is the offense is so poor that getting into shootouts is just not happening for this team. Now, where I won't completely, fully defend the defense, and where there are things, and because I talked about this, I think, earlier in the show, that you can make an argument against Hutzler for sure. Some of their issues with stopping the run does come down to, like, guys just missing tackles and guys being completely run past. You see some of those breakaway runs where it becomes a running back versus a defender in space. Yeah, that's schemed up from the offense, and obviously it starts with the fact that you're not able to get the push up front to disrupt things and let a free runner come. But if every single time a running back gets into the open field, one of your guys is taking a poor angle and not able to get to him, that probably does fall back on you as a coach. And again, Ahmad Hardy's a great break tackle runner. That is one of his strengths for sure. But the number of times where it felt like they did have a guy bottled up, Hardy or Jamal Roberts for that matter, and then they just keep pushing ahead and churning their legs for several yards. Yeah, you give credit to the back for being a talented player, but my God, why can you not tackle? So those are things, if you want to argue that Hutz is still ultimately the problem, like I get that. And you can also argue it from the standpoint of obtaining the talent. Because even if you're going to say talent's the biggest issue, we knew talent was a big issue, and you had to go out and get players, and you hit on a few of them. You hit on Jerron Manning. I think you hit on a Darian Gillette and a Jalen Smith. You hit on, I think a couple of the defensive linemen are solid guys. You hit on Will Whitson. That's bad luck that worked out the way that it did. But when you having that type of a big turnaround and that you couldn't get multiple defensive linemen who could be big-time players, that's a negative as well. So you can point it towards Hutzler if you want. Like, that's certainly something that you can look to. I think Lebby, because I'm going to just assume he's the coach next year, he'll be able to justify it either way, I think. I don't think it is going to be the worst thing in the world if he doesn't choose to make a change. But I would also say that if he does make a change, I would understand it. And I would furthermore say that if the offense is not going to get to a point where it's fully fixed, then maybe you do have to go out and make sure you're hiring. We just got to find a big-time defensive coordinator. And if that means we're paying $2.5 million a year for that guy, you got to find a way to do it to make sure we have a defense that's going to play at the highest level possible, because for whatever reason, we can't get the offense figured out. I don't think Hutz has been bad this year. I really don't. And that's why I'm not going to be upset if he returns next season. But I also understand what I just described falls on Lebby ultimately. Obviously, it all falls on Lebby because he's the head coach. But the fact you've got a guy who Mississippi State should be in a position under Jeff Lebby where it's a matter of, hey, we're going to score a lot of points. Defense, can you just be solid? And they are once again finding themselves having to revert back to this place they've been so often where it's like, defense, please win us the football game because the offense can't do enough. And why that continues to be a case for Mississippi State with guys who are known as great play callers and great offensive minds, I couldn't tell you. But unfortunately, right now, your defensive talent is not in a place where you can win that way. The previous coaching staffs had good enough players on defense. They could win that way even if their own offense was not succeeding. Lebby is not in that position because of the players he inherited, but two, they have not been able to upgrade the roster defensively in the way that they would like top to bottom. Is it fair to expect going from being completely unplayable in year one to then year two having an SEC caliber defense? That's a question for another day. I don't know. I'm not going to turn it into an NIL thing because I don't want to go down that road. But there, you can argue it a lot of different ways. I guess what I'm getting at. That's a lot of talking about the defense. The offense, of course, though, is where people are really going to focus in this game. And we will specifically get into the quarterback stuff and Lebby's handling it like after this. But, just some of the big points to hit on offense. O-line remains a complete disaster. You had Albert Reese back, and it didn't matter. They did not play well in this game. Pass protection was terrible in this game once again. Javen James was horrific. The pre-snap penalties, I think he got called for holding at least once, gave up multiple pressures in this game. Terrible, terrible game for him. Probably as bad as he's played all year. I don't know why they won't just put Reese at left tackle. And maybe it's just that was going to be something where they felt they needed to do it by necessity early in the year. And then once the injuries happened the way they did, they put him to right tackle and he was just playing well. So they stuck there. But he started at guard in this game. We talked about last week, there was discussion of, hey, they're talking about potentially moving Albert Reese, to a different spot. Could that be guard or is it going to be left tackle? I didn't think it made sense to put him at guard because your issues primarily are at tackle. Yeah, your interior of the line hasn't played great either, but they haven't been horrific. It's been, tackle that has been bad. And yes, Reese has been better as a right tackle, but given all the issues you've had, given the number of times that Shapen has been blindsided and gets knocked the F out with a free rusher off his blind side, putting your best guy out there, I think, makes a lot of sense. And they didn't do it. And they stuck with Javen James there. And I think they talked about they were going to play Jimothy some at right tackle in this game. And I guess he didn't play in the second half because he was having some issues, which that's a disappointment that he's having the season that he is. I get he's a redshirt freshman. It was always a kid that was going to be some level of development, but you would be hoping he was performing better at this point by now. So pass protection was bad. We expected that. And I don't love what they're doing with Reese. Run blocking was terrible. They couldn't run the ball at all. And the lack of carries for the running backs, I know, is a big talking point, and it is incredible the first drive of the second half. They give the ball to the backs more, and those guys suddenly find success. That said, and this is not me excusing Lebby for not giving them the ball more. He should have, because they're too good of players. There should have been more designed handoffs. However, 10 for 34 for Booth, 3.4 a carry, long run of 9. 6 for 25 for Fluff, 4.2 a carry, long run of 10. And, Gaden, basically all of his action came in garbage time, so I'm really not going to get into that. You're not going to be successful if you're talking about, 59 combined yards between your top two backs, and neither of them had a single explosive run. The fact they can't run block up front is a problem. And Trey Clark did have the comment, and I'm becoming more convinced we have a load hole problem. The O-line gets worse weekly. Starting to become concerned too. And there's part of me that wonders, okay, last year, for as bad as that group was, yes, they got better over the course of the year. And that's one of the things that was sort of a feather in Cody Kennedy's cap, was that unit did, by the end of the season, perform. They weren't good, but they were giving you something, in the run game. And then for whatever reason, they had a good pass protection day against Ole Miss and that pass rush, which made no sense whatsoever, but, whatever. They did stay healthy, though, throughout the year. And cohesion on offensive line does matter a lot. Having those reps together does matter a lot. So it makes a lot of sense that that unit that had a lot of new faces coming together got better over the course of the year, because even though they were not very talented, they were not SEC level offensive linemen, getting regular snaps together, playing in the same spot for the most part over and over and over again, you can get to a point where you start to figure things out. And it's like, all right, look, we ain't going to be great up here, but can we get a stalemate to at least give our running back a crease and he can pick up positive yardage? Let's see if we can do that. This year, they have dealt with so many injuries, have had to shuffle things around so much. While, again, they were more experienced than a season ago, but they still brought in a lot of new pieces on the O-line compared to where they were last year. And you had guys who showed up in the fall that were not there before. I do wonder if some of the issue is just the fact that they have not been able to have consistent reps alongside each other. And that's not a total excuse for Loadholt. You still expect better of the group. A lot of these guys are ones he decided he wanted in the program. He made the decision to move on from some of the guys that they had in the spring. I don't fault him for that, because those guys were not good pickups. And the guys you added looked to be better pieces. But ultimately, you got to find a way to make it work. And again, look, one of the guys you were going to count on, Blake Steen, gets done for the year in the first game. And I know he looked bad in that first half against Southern Miss, but one half of football, can you say that that's who he is over the course of the entire season? That's tough to judge. Maybe things are different if you have him healthy the entire year. And you're looking at, I don't think he's the difference in an offensive line that's good versus, horrific, but maybe you can just be average, right? And it can be a group you can work with more, because, hey, this is an offense that a lot of times having an average offensive line is good enough, but they're terrible on that side of the ball. And yeah, you expect better out of Loadholt. I don't think that a change would be made there. I think that I could see a change happening with Hutzler. I don't think it will, but I could see it happening. I don't see a change happening at O-line. I think Levy's going to stick with his guy there and, try to keep cohesion in that group for an off season as much as possible, because they should be more experienced next year. You're losing your best player because Reese is going to be done, but most everybody else would be back. You're going to lose Cannon Boone. You're going to lose Jacoby Jackson, but a lot of other guys who have been in that room and have played. And in theory, could go out and get more talent. We'll see. But that group has definitely been a big disappointment, and that hurts everything that you can do on offense, because it's kind of the same thing we talked about early last season. This is an offense where if you cannot punish teams in the ground game, if they give you looks to run the football, you're going to have a problem. And they were not able to do that. They've not been able to do it out for much of the season. Quarterback run wasn't effective. And the quarterback run thing, I'm going to include that in the Levy discussion, but the fact that, part of the Levy calling quarterback run is the idea of, we get +1. Because if you run the quarterback, you got a guy who's blocking for him, or you're reading someone, so you take advantage of him. In theory, quarterback runs should be a little bit more effective. They were still getting blown up. Missouri was still all over it. It's because you got no push up front, and you just can't work that way. Brennan Thompson going down didn't help, and I don't know what the situation is there. But it's very clear. That receiving core, when you don't have a guy that is a true consistent threat to take the top off the defense, especially with the way that they play in this offense, the type of routes that they run, that becomes a problem. And obviously Anthony Evans can do some of that himself, but he, again, is most effective as a slot guy. So you need to have that guy who can take the top of the defense. Aiden Williams has not shown that. Jordan Mosley has shown that, but has never been consistent whatsoever. Consistency has been what Mosley's problem, and that's why he's no longer a starter. And then I know, they get Frisco McGee out there. Good that he got some reps. I know that's someone that people are excited for, but he's not ready to step in and be someone to make a big difference. So that hurt things in the second half in their ability to really get the pass game going at all. I think it does hammer home the point that next year finding a true outside receiver that is a blazer is going to be important. You don't know if you've got that guy on the roster this year. It is very clear that is an important position for this offense. And you're going to have to find somebody in the portal who can come and play that role, because, I don't think you're going to get Thompson back. We'll see maybe if they find a way to find an extra year. Everybody gets extra years these days, but you imagine Brennan Thompson's career is going to be done. I'm not talking about from an injury standpoint. I don't know what his status will be for the Egg Bowl or any of that. I don't even know what he got hurt with or what that situation was. College career will be done after this season. You got to find somebody who can step in and play that type of role. even if they're not as complete a player as he became over the course of the season, if it can just be that guy who you trust every single time can win vertically down the field, you have to have it for this offense to be effective. So once he went down, that was a problem. Blake Shapen wasn't good. Blake Shapen didn't have a good game. I mean, what else is new? Water is wet. The sky is blue. I'm a fat dude with a beard. Like everything, it's the same thing every single week with Shapen at this point. So I guess that leads into the discussion with Lebby and some of his game management, some of his play calling, and then the quarterback thing. To start, the constant quarterback runs was just utterly insane. That was absurd. And I already talked about it. Like, I get it. The run game is not working. Theoretically, your run game is supposed to be better if you are running the quarterback because of the numbers, that advantage that it gives you. And if you're thinking we've got to find a way to generate yards on the ground, running the QB, okay. I understand all that. When you're talking about a situation where you have like 6 quarterback runs in a row, and I understand a couple of those were scrambles, that is absurd. You had 9 on one drive. Like the biggest disaster screw-up drive that State has had this season. 9 QB runs. I don't care that a few of them were scrambles. You had 9 QB runs on one drive. On what planet does that make sense whatsoever? Like, Blake Shapen had 17 rushes in this game. 3 of those were sacks. So he still ran the ball 14 times. Probably 4 of those were scrambles. He should never be leading the team in rushes. Like, he should never be leading the team in rushes. And this is coming from someone who has defended calling QB runs with Shapen. There's a reason you call it with Shapen. He's not completely immobile. He is terrible about escaping pressure. He cannot do that. And obviously, he's not going to bowl anyone over. But he can get a few yards. He can, if it's a read option keeper, typically get a decent gain around the edge. He has enough quickness that it's not malpractice to call quarterback run with him as a changeup. He is not someone to lean on as a featured runner. The reason Lebby calls it with Shapen on occasion is literally keep the defense honest. We don't want them – we're basically trying to catch them sleeping. That, hey, they're going to expect he's not the one keeping running it here. Let's let him run it. And it's one of those things that the defense has to keep in mind that, hey, we can't rule out quarterback run if Shapen's on the field. And we can't – he doesn't want it to have to be a signal that every single time we're going to run the quarterback, we're going to bring Camario in. You don't want the defense to just, all right, well, they clearly want to run quarterback here. And obviously there's the play action stuff with Camario that you can do off of what he does, and you can still set him up. It's just the idea that you are constantly trying to present a defense. I have to consider every variable when this guy's on the field, no matter what. That's why they run him. That's why I don't think it's malpractice. Okay, fine. But if he shouldn't be the leading rusher. It's a changeup. It's something you do on occasion. It can't be something you're doing every single play. And Lebby defended it. He used the excuse that it's an RPO thing. Like, first, Cole Kubelik at halftime, he talked about like the box count was there for the run. That's the quarterback's just making that read, so they're going with the run. You're calling QB run RPOs. People have gotten confused over RPO. I think people just RPO and read option goes together. RPO is run pass option. Now, you may have an RPO where there's an element of – you can have an RPO that has all 3 elements. You can have an RPO that is handoff to a running back, quarterback keeper, quarterback throw option. You have those plays. State has those plays in the playbook. You have some where it is either – you are either handing this ball off to the back or you are throwing it to whoever. And then you have some where, hey, either the quarterback is running this ball or he's throwing it to wherever. Most of the ones they were calling was the last one I just mentioned. It is a designed run for the quarterback where he has the outlet to throw a pass depending on a read. The play call is a quarterback run, and the tag is the RPO, that he's got a pass option. You still call it a quarterback run. So don't put it on the RPO and say, well, that's just the quarterback's making the read. No, you could call another play where the quarterback running is not an option. And then he had it later in the postgame. He talked about it as like read option type plays. He talked about reading a C-gap player. There might have been a couple of those. And yeah, there were a couple of those. There were very few situations where the quarterback was keeping the ball and running it because, and they had an option to hand off to the back. There were a few. Most of the RPOs, mostly like when people start talking about, here's shaping with the quarterback, draw back power, which ironically those plays were not drawing power, but I know that's getting into the weeds. Nobody cares about that. Those plays are very clearly the quarterback running the football. That is not an option of the running back has the ability to keep the ball there. You are calling quarterback runs with a pass option built off it. Do not use the RPO excuse. Do not use, well, he's got the ability to throw the ball, or, well, some of those plays could have gone to the running back. You were primarily calling runs where the designed play is a quarterback run. So that excuse is BS. Here's the other thing. Even with all of that explained, if your game plan in this game, and Levy talked about this in the postgame, that a lot of it was because of the looks they were getting from Missouri, they felt they needed to run the quarterback to be able to generate offense, to be able to find the ground game. If that's what you're going to say, then Kamario Taylor does have to be in the game. If your game plan is going to be, we need to run the quarterback a lot in this game, then you do just have to put the guy who's a better runner in. I can live with shaping running the ball here and there as a changeup within the full scheme of the offense. If you were just running your normal system and, hey, we need to have quarterback run be something the defense has to worry about, or we can catch them sleeping here, fine. Shaping's going to carry it 5 times a game, whatever. If you're going into a game saying we have to run it, then you got to just put the better player in and just not worry about whether or not they're able to defend it or key in on it. You cannot have a game plan, we are going to be heavy quarterback run, and then not play Kamario Taylor primarily. That makes no sense whatsoever. The other part to this, and this goes back to the RPO excuse, and this is something I know Joe Moorhead took heat for this, and this is a problem with this system. And this is something that if you're going to keep this system moving forward, you do have to start to adjust more. And I've seen Levy adjust some at Oklahoma. I've seen him adjust occasionally here at Mississippi State. You might have to adjust more. The idea of every single run is an RPO, every single play has multiple options, that was all fun in college football, 10 years ago. At this point, and it was still fresh and new, and nobody had caught on how to deal with it. The reality of playing an RPO is that you are playing an option, and you are making a decision off of what the defense does. That means the defense technically gets to decide what you do on a play. Now, you can say we always make the defense wrong. No, sometimes the defense makes you wrong. The better coach defenses, and when teams are seeing these spread RPO systems every single week, eventually defenses are going to start to figure out, hey, here's how we have to deal with this. Like some of the answers they used to have for RPOs is like, well, just play man coverage. Good luck doing that in college football, playing man coverage every single play. You're going to get beat over the top constantly. That's not an answer for most teams. But they have found ways to play zone. And some of the 3 high safety stuff, the defense that State was doing, well, Arnett, his defense had some of it. The defense you've seen under State under Hutzler that fans have had an issue with is kind of designed for that as well. We are going to force you into doing the play that we think is least damaging to us, and then we are going to then go attack that. If you run an option, the defense gets to dictate what you do. If they're a well-coached defense, you face a lot of well-coached defenses in the SEC. Yes, defenses that you can overwhelm from a talent standpoint, they can do that all day, and it doesn't matter. You're just going to be better than them. You're facing a lot of defenses with a lot of talent and a lot of good DCs in the SEC. So when you do everything off of the RPO, they have ways to go and attack that and limit what you can do. Which is why I don't like listening to the excuse of whether it's what we're taking, it's the option and it's what the defense is dictating. You're the play caller. You don't have to call that play. You can call the play that gets the ball in the hands of other players. You can find other ways to move the football. Do not live and die off of RPOs. You can't do that in college football going forward consistently. Even Tennessee, who felt like they were the ones who were like holding on as much as possible to like, we are running the Art Briles Baylor offense. When everybody else off that tree was kind of like, a lot of this is still good, but some of it we have to change up. Go watch what Tennessee does this year. It ain't the same as what Mississippi State does. They have found other ways to move the football. They have found other ways to deal with the defensive answers for handling the spread RPO. Now they are attacking that as an offense. And I thought Levy was a coach that had been in the forefront of attacking those things. And you're just not really seeing it this year. And that's why I completely push back against all these RPO excuses. And again, Moorhead did the same thing. Moorhead's offense, that was a big problem, is that defenses would bait them into making a decision that they knew they could go and attack. Because every single play Moorhead called in the run game was an RPO. They were not going to call a run that did not have a pass option. So the defense made sure they took advantage of that. Like, that falls on the system. That's something you have to handle better as a coach. So I don't buy into that at all. But again, if you're saying we have to do quarterback run, then you have to put Camario in. Like, it's absurd. And then you get down inside the 10-yard line and you have 8 snaps and not once the ball goes to Fluff or Booth. Not once you try and, hey, they score a touchdown on the second half, getting Traore to the flat. Or trying to hit Evans or Thompson like that. We're just going to run quarterback up the middle over and over and over again. And even once they put Camario Taylor in, the defense had figured it out at that point. I know it's very funny. They had like the drive coming out of halftime. They score a touchdown on a quarterback run. That was funny. But if it's not working, I don't get why you wouldn't make changes there. Which also, of note on that sequence, where it falls apart down there in the goal line. Special teams, Cliff Odom's got to go. Special teams have not been good this year. I mean, Kyle Ferry's been fine. I guess kickoffs have been fine. They really haven't given up a lot of returns off of that. But some of the handling of what they've done with the punting situation, obviously the punt return against Texas, and the fact that you even gave that as an option to allow that to happen was utterly absurd, and you lose the football game because of it. You botch this snap, and then your guys aren't able to go and cover it. They have not done anything in the return game at all this season, despite having multiple guys who, like Anthony Evans, like what Anthony Evans had done prior to coming to Mississippi State, that what he was most known for was as a kick returner and a punt returner. Now, obviously, we're lucky that he has proven to be a really dang good wide receiver, but we have gotten none of the return game stuff out of him. And I know some of that hinges on, you know, if every time you have to fair catch because of the way it's covered, or you don't get a chance to run it out of the end zone. But I don't know, man. Like, come up with different ways of blocking it. Like, when State has had returns, they haven't had good returns. I think Evans has had like one good return all season. Special teams has not been good enough for Mississippi State this year. Cliff Odom, just clearly it's time for a change there. Like, that's the aside. I've got more thoughts on the quarterback thing, but it's because I'm reading through it. The fourth down call, down 11 in the fourth quarter. Let me go to the play-by-play. I mean, they had a couple fourth downs. They had back-to-back drives, so they went for fourth downs and didn't work. Down 28-17, and that was still third quarter. That was stupid, doing that like at your own 20. I defended going for fourth down against Georgia last week. I think that is a completely different game, completely different situation. That was a game where I understood why they did it fully, and it had nothing to do with where we need to make this a one-score game. It had everything to do with our defense cannot get a stop in this game. We have to make sure we are scoring touchdowns. So, yes, we're going to be aggressive and go for that fourth down. I don't take issue with last week whatsoever. Down 11 here in this game in the third quarter, when your defense had actually started to get a few stops and your offense had played a little bit better, you had put together drives in this game. Going for that fourth down just does not make sense. And maybe it doesn't make a difference in the end of the day because of how poorly you could stop the run. Maybe it's kind of similar to what I said against Georgia, and that, hey, we can't let this drive stall out. We got to find a way to keep this going and get points. That call was dumb, and it backfires because you get the interception on it, which Missouri runs for a touchdown, and that was all she wrote. Like, you were completely out of it at that point. And it's very funny in the fourth quarter. You have a long drive, and you get a fourth and long, and you just kick a field goal, which I get it. You're not going to convert a fourth and long. Might as well it was kind of a just whatever, we'll just kick the field goal. But still, that's a pretty ridiculous look just in general When you go for the fourth down in your own territory and it blows up in your face, and then you have a long drive with the game out of reach, and you say, whatever, we'll kick a field goal, make the score looks like slightly better. It just looks bad. It doesn't look good handling the game in that way. And then how they handled the quarterback situation. The first half, I think the first time Camario comes on the field is for that trick play. It worked, so can't really complain there. And then he gets subbed in a couple times for some runs, which you had kind of seen. And it wasn't what I talked about as I took issue with against Georgia, where you have a good drive going, you hit explosive plays, and then you kill your momentum by subbing QBs. Like, there was situations where it's like, we need to bring in the better runner, more physical runner here, so we're going to bring him in. First half, whatever. The second half, the fact the offense was continually stalling out and Shapen was completely floundering out there, and you just have Camario sitting on the sidelines, when we have seen week after week after week of the same crap from this offense and from Blake Shapen at quarterback, and you won't make the change when you've got a chance to go to a bowl. Like, the whole argument of playing Shapen is we need to have the veteran in to make us a bowl. And Will, I do see your comment about the Levy quote. I have it in my notes. I'm gonna hit that. Which also the play with Shapen running that, cool. Like, yeah, it worked. Cool. It was cool design, worked out. And I keep talking to Will. Yeah, your theory on QB runs. I won't share it on here, but it was very funny. I don't know how you don't try and find a way to get a spark. You were in the football game. Like, this philosophy of let's just see if Shapen can figure it out. He's not going to figure it out. Like, you keep rolling with the same thing over and over and over again. He's made it clear he can't handle it and is not going to be the one to go out and lead you. Put Camario in and just see if something different changes. See if it works out for you. And I'm not saying it would or that it wouldn't, but you have to try. You are trying to find a way to win a football game. Your starting quarterback clearly does not have it. See if the backup, who is immensely talented and has done some really impressive things for you this year, and is a big reason why you even got one SEC win at this point, and why you still have any sort of a chance to go to a bowl game, does hinge on having a quarterback as talented as Camario Taylor on the roster. And you won't even try to give him a series and see if it rejuvenates things and gives you some life. It is insane. And the fact that you are running so many plays where you're constantly under pressure. You are running so many plays where Shapen's having to scramble. And Shapen had one really good scramble in this game. Good for him. And he had a few where he got okay yardage. He also had a lot of scrambles that went nowhere. See if Camario can go in and get something there. Yeah, again, it's no different. Like, well, we can't put it on the quarterback when nothing's open downfield and the pass rush is on the coming at them right away. I can't talk at this point. Put the guy in who can make plays just happen. It makes no sense to not try something else. Yeah, sip of Sprite. No free ads. The Sprite Winter Sprite Cranberry is like the greatest invention that Sprite has ever had. It is remarkable. No, it makes no sense to continue sticking with the same thing over and over again when it doesn't work. And the definition of insanity, all that jazz. And for him to have the audacity to, in the post game, when asked what is the difference between these guys, and he gives a quote where he says, it's the decision-making and having the ability to not waste a play, and that is why Blake plays and not Camario Taylor. Buddy, I do not know how you say that with a straight face, having watched this team the entire season. That is one of the stupidest things I've ever heard from a coach. I'm just being completely honest. Saying that when you have watched this offense and you have seen Shapen have the ability to not waste a play, Did you not see the Florida game? When you have a wide open touchdown every other play and he couldn't hit him? You miss a touchdown in overtime against Texas that he had open and he misses. And you see the plays where it's a disaster. Well, we have the ability to not waste a play. You know what waste a play? Taking a sack you didn't have to take. Or not being able to get out of pressure. The guy wastes plays left and right. And you're going to tell me that's why he's on the field is because the other guy's going to waste more plays than him? Bull crap. That is so utterly stupid. I don't give a crap about what he does this in practice and the leadership of it all and who knows the playbook more. That is an absurd statement from Levy. It was an absurd decision how he handled quarterback in this game. And I am actually flipping on something I said in the preseason. There was all the talk, about starting Camario in the preseason and that if you didn't start him this year, he's going to portal out. And what I pointed out was I thought that was a pretty absurd thing to suggest because everyone knew Blake was going to be the starter coming into the year. That was just established. I guarantee you, even Camario Taylor and all his people and everything, when they signed, hey, Blake Shapen's here. Okay, Shapen's going to be the guy this year. Everybody knew Shapen was going to be a starter coming into the year. And sure, you would hope Camario Taylor could find ways to get on the field and all that stuff, but you knew who the starter was going to be. And knowing that situation, and you also know that next year, Camario is going to be the guy. I know Croman Hawk's here, but let's be real. You know that going into 2026, Camario Taylor is your quarterback. Okay, cool. It didn't make sense to say, well, he's going to transfer out if you don't play him as a freshman. Because it's like, okay, but he doesn't get that year back. If he says, well, I'm mad because you didn't play me as a freshman. Well, whether you redshirt or not, the year's gone. Your timeline hasn't changed. So what difference does it make you going to a different school? That's why, preseason, all those comments didn't make any sense. Watching how Levy has managed it this year, I do start to worry, is he going to want to play for this guy? And maybe that's just a crazy assumption for me to make. I feel like this is one of the only situations where you could play a quarterback as much as Camario has played. And he has played a lot for a true freshman, to be fair. And given him the reps that he has gotten as a true freshman, some of the opportunities that he has gotten, and finding ways to get him involved, that you would give a guy that type of opportunity and you might still end up losing him because of how you managed it. Because I don't know how you can be okay with a coach if he's going to just leave the other guy in nonstop and not be willing to give you the reins. And then some of the comments that Levy has made about Taylor and his understanding of things. And I don't think he's going to leave, but that is now in the back of my mind. Are they going to look at Levy and say, that's not a guy that I want to play for at this point? Which, man, that would be really freaking disheartening. I'll be honest right here. If Camario Taylor transfers out, Jeff Levy should be fired. I don't even know if that's a hot take. There's me saying something I wouldn't say. I would almost never say that about a player transferring. If you lose the most talented quarterback you have ever had in the history of this program because of the way a coach handled it, the coach should be gone. And I pray to God that is not going to happen, and that's not the situation. But I cannot believe that's how he chose to handle things. You, at a certain point, have just got to give him a chance and see if it gives your offense anything with the way that they have been performing. Because Shapen doesn't have it. And y'all know, if you've listened to the show or followed me on Twitter, I've defended Shapen a lot. It's gotten to a point that there's no one that can watch it and say anything other than he is not the right quarterback for this team right now. Or in general. And you've got to turn the reins over and just see if playing Camario does anything for you and helps you in any sort of way. Is Levy going to do that? Well, I mean, look, the first play Camario has in the game, and I pointed this out. Not the first play he has in the game. The first play that he gets when he gets subbed in and when Levy finally does decide to put him in late in the game, when you're completely out of it. He gets a free rusher in his face. Jalen Cattle on the safety comes down on a blitz. Doesn't get picked up by the offensive line. Doesn't get picked up by the backs, which, I mean, the back was out in protection. Back was out on a route, not in protection. Or maybe he checked beforehand and then released, whatever. And Camario sidesteps him, steps up in the pocket, resets his feet to his check down, hits Booth or Bothwell, whoever it was, and they get upfield for a good gain. And it was both a really impressive play athletically to avoid the sack in that moment, but also kind of a routine, like, this is big boy quarterbacking. Like, avoid pressure, get to your check down, find a positive play. Like, don't just panic here. And I pointed out that right there is why, like, Camario has to be the guy, because you have a freshman making a big boy play that a lot of freshmen are not going to make, because a lot of freshmen do not make that play. And you've got a 6-year quarterback on the team that can't make the play. And I got in an argument with the guy over it because, he pointed out because it's garbage time that it's not something to get all excited about. And I know I talked about, like, Gaden had runs in garbage time that I don't really react to. That play, like, the starters are on the field and he has a free rusher in his face. I don't care that it's garbage time. It's still a good play to make, whether they're going all out or not. And where we finally like came to the end of the disagreement, what I just pointed out is like, look, whether you think it's all a product of garbage time, whether you think it's a product of it's not really that impressive a play, quarterbacks do that every single week. Okay, fine, whatever. Can Blake Shapen make the play? No. Your starting quarterback, the 6-year player, can't do it. The freshman can. Play the freshman. It's that simple. And yes, the way that he truly can take, like, he took some sacks. He got stuffed on several runs. Like, this was the first time we've seen Camario like have situations where it's like, okay, like, he's not going to escape pressure a single time. There's going to be times, and there's going to be times he tries to run and it's not going to be there. There's going to be times on a designed quarterback carry, he's just going to get bottled up and it's not going to go anywhere. We're well aware. Like, I think you're kidding yourself if you think Camario, every single time there's pressure, is going to escape it and turn it into a positive play, or that every single run is going to go for a big gain. No, there's going to be situations where it doesn't work out. But he has enough situations where he does make something out of it. Where Shapen, it's like once every other game. Like I said, in this game, he had one really nice scramble where he did a good job of escaping pressure and got upfield for a really nice gain. Good job. It's like once every other game that Shapen does that. Maybe once a game for being generous. Camario, it feels like every time he's in limited sample sets, we see it multiple times. Those types of plays can add up over the course of a game and be the difference in you winning and losing, that you have a guy that's type of a playmaker and you won't just turn him loose. It baffles me. And this is another example, and I said this off the top in this show, that you can have the 10,000-foot view of the program and look at the more wins and the overall trajectory, which is what, if you're outside of Mississippi State, that's the perspective you're going to have, and say, man, Levy's doing a fantastic job. And then you watch the games, you actually watch the team play, and it's the same issues over and over again in the decision-making and how he has managed his quarterback situation. And it really makes you wonder if you have the right guy leading the program. Seriously makes you wonder if you have the right guy leading the program. And, he's going to be back next year. I guess. He's going to be back next year. He's not getting fired. Even what I said, like the little thing I said, that if Camario Taylor leaves, like, fire Levy, it's not going to happen. He's going to be the coach next year. But is anyone excited for that football program? Is anyone excited? No. Now, we all know there's a way to get excited, and that's you go and you win the Egg Bowl, especially if you're playing Camario Taylor and he's awesome. Or, by God, at this point, even if you lose the dang game but you play Camario Taylor and he plays really well, I was going to say people would be excited, but no, everybody's going to be pissed off because it's like, why the hell were you not playing this guy earlier? And you could have gotten more wins than you did. So Levy has screwed himself at this point. Like, unless you win the Egg Bowl with Kamario Taylor and then you go win a bowl game and you close the season with the positivity, no one's happy going into next year at this point. But I guess at least if Kamario is promising and he is the guy for next year and you don't lose him, then you're fully in on like, all right, at least we have a special player there, and that can be something. But yeah, I mean, if Kamario Taylor stays next season, it's going to be like a breath of fresh air when it comes to quarterback play. Feels like it. And like, God, I don't want to overhype the kid, put too much pressure on him, but it feels different. Salty Andrew is my favorite Andrew. Yeah. What's weird is like I was laughing last night, like literally during the game, I was laughing and just really not like. There was a couple times I reacted to Javen James and some of the crap there. Oh, I didn't even finish going. I had stuff I wanted to say about Shapen. I mean, why not? I mean, I won't be able to have it as a part of the other stuff I talked about, but like, it's like why the first interception he throws. Yeah, it's kind of bad luck because the ball gets tipped up in the air. The receiver's covered. Like you threw to a covered guy. So you took a risky throw, and like, yes, did it take a miracle pick for it to get picked off? But you still took a risk. Excuse me. I'm gonna have more Sprite. My God. Oh, those are great sounds coming through the camera right there. I lose my voice too easily. So like I can't absolve him of blame on that pick. And then you have the interception on fourth down. And it's always kind of a back and forth thing of like, you need your quarterback to be willing to take a risk on fourth down. And it's like, hey, man, like an interception here in theory shouldn't matter because you're turning it over either way. You got to just put the ball out there, give it a chance, which I know Jordan Rogers showed it on the breakdown. He had a receiver open and he just didn't see it early enough and threw it late. But guess what happened? Throwing late does to you. If you throw late, you're probably going to get picked off and it gets run back for a touchdown. It was still a bad play from Shapen. And then the last fourth down, he throws it in the dirt. And I don't know if the pick six on the drive before just messed with his brain and he was like, I can't do that again. You throw it in the dirt and throw it at the feet of your run. I think it was the running back on a fourth down play, and you don't even give it a chance. That's pathetic, dude. And those are the types of plays that it's like, hey, Levy, we're talking about the guy doesn't waste plays. He's wasting plays. It's terrible. Does Levy need to hire an OC or is that no reaction? I don't know. We had a discussion early in the year and I was pretty adamant of Levy just needs to be the play caller. I got to be honest with you. Like, I don't know if anything changes if Levy hires an OC because I don't think Levy's a good head coach at this point. Like, I mean, I have a hard time looking at what Levy has done to this point in the season and saying that guy's going to be a successful head coach at Mississippi State. And maybe this blows up in my face and is dead wrong and he turns this thing around and he's winning a bunch of games. And if so, fantastic. Because I would rather look stupid at Mississippi State win games than be right. But so many of the things that I wonder about with Levy, I wonder about his ability as a head coach. Like, why do your teams make the same mistake every single week? Why do you find ways to lose every single week? Your game management decisions. Are you going to change that if you stop calling plays? That was one of the things I argued before. Going for some of the fourth downs that he does and doesn't go for, or choosing to continue to be aggressive against Florida and you end up throwing an interception. Does that change if Levy's a head coach versus a play caller? I don't know. But like it, maybe you want to get someone else in there, but it's just like I don't trust the guy. You'll have to excuse me. Sorry. I've been This show is wearing on me. I don't know if I trust the guy to be a great head coach and lead the team regardless. So yeah, things are fun right now for Mississippi State football. Really fun. And it is so annoying because I go back to the preseason of the expectations we had coming into the year, and it's just like, if you were where we were right now, you told us that, I think everybody would have taken it. I just didn't see it playing out this way. Really did not see the season playing out the way that's played out to this point. I didn't think they'd be. I thought they would just be a team that's not very good, and that would be the extent of it, which is accurate for this team. But the way they're not good, the way that they're bad, is so infuriating because they could be better if they just executed better, and if they put a different quarterback in, and Levy made a few different decisions. But they are where they are. We'll see if it changes in the Egg Bowl. You got 2 weeks. Does Ole Miss still have a coach at that point? I don't know. Well, I'm not going to turn this into a Kiffin discussion, but I do love how he's immediately made them all very angry again in the midst of a great season for their program. I also love all the Ole Miss fans that are like, we're not going to play this game. We're not going to put up with your BS. Just go, man. Like, we're not going to deal with this. If you don't love Ole Miss, we don't love you. And it's like, y'all are so full of crap. Y'all are going to play his game every single time because y'all know you got to have him. And that's just is what it is. Y'all are going to put up with his BS every single time this happens because you cannot afford to lose him. But maybe the minds are not right in Oxford. Shout out to Brian Haydad for if they get to that point with the coaching search thing. I don't know. Now that I've said this, Lane's just going to go and sign the contract, and of course, and then they're going to go hang 50 on State, I'm sure. No, look, I expect State to play hard. I mean, they play hard in the Egg Bowl every single year. They're going to get fired up for it. Be great if they go and win it. Even though I said, are we sure we want to see this team in a bowl game? And I tweeted that out. And a couple people took me seriously. Like, guys, I want them to go to a bowl game. I get it. I'm just talking about this team is such a chore to watch that winning another game just doesn't really change the way you feel about this individual team from a watchability standpoint and enjoyability. But in terms of the program, obviously going to a bowl game would be fantastic. So I was being sarcastic with that, but we'll see what happens in the Egg Bowl. I mean, I talked about this going in. I think I talked about this going into the Missouri game that Ole Miss is a much better team than Missouri, but I feel State matches up with Ole Miss better than Missouri. So we'll see. We'll see if you have an opportunity in that game. Need to get it. Really need to get it. I don't know when we're going to go for the midweek show. I don't know if we're going to go tomorrow night. I don't know if it's going to be later in the week. I haven't talked with Christian on that yet, so we'll figure that out. I do know you can catch me Wednesday night on SEC at the Voice of College Football for SEC Primetime Live. Been having a lot of fun doing that show, talking SEC football. I'm sure we'll have a really fun conversation. So go subscribe to the SEC Voice of College Football channel as well. Let's get the numbers up over there, and you guys can hear me talk about more things other than Mississippi State. We're obviously not going to talk a ton of Bulldogs in that show because we talk about the SEC as a whole. But if you want some SEC coverage, we got a good show over on the SEC Voice of College Football Wednesday nights, typically at 7 p.m. Central Time is when we do that live show. But for our typical Mississippi State live show during the week, don't know when that's going to be because of the bye week. Probably just going to do one show this week. I think that's the plan. I guess if there's news, we could come in. But yeah, you'll catch us one time at some point later in the week, and then we'll be looking ahead to the Egg Bowl. So an exciting couple of weeks ahead, even in the midst of this just frustrating MSU football season. Really appreciate all of you who were a part of the chat tonight. We're tuning in, just watching along. Great to have a good conversation back and forth with a lot of you and to, have a little bit of an audience. I really do enjoy it. If you haven't already, really would appreciate if you could leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're not already, and turn that notification bell on so you do know when we do go live. That'll do it for me tonight. As always, swing your sword and Hail State.
College football is even more exciting when you've got some action on the line, and the games are even better when you're cashing in. And the Voice of College Football is the place to be to get the greatest value. Start with my picks. 75% against the money line, 58% against the spread, and I've got a 40-plus year track record. 11-0 in the college football playoff for me last year against the money line, 8-3 against the spread. And I'm just the warm-up act. Steve Merrill of Wager Talk is our ace in the hole, show stopper. 7 years with the Voice of College Football, over 30 years in the industry. Steve gives us analysis on all the big games, but you can't miss Steve's weekly under-the-radar pick. 28-12 against the spread the last 3 years. You also get picks from some of our top analysts here at the Voice of College Football, including Corey Bratta, Matt Zemek, and Steve Dace. Check out those numbers. Become a YouTube or Patreon member for just $99 per month. Go to the main channel on YouTube, click join, and then select the betting tier. Do the same thing on Patreon. Make 2025 a winner now.